I've got to thank the hard-working committee. I've got to thank them greatly. The committee in general, but special recognition, I think, should go to Benita Johnson, Joan Clark, and Clarice Granger for the organisation, and Andrea Major for the publicity. In general, we are progressing well. Our membership is rising. We are approaching 200 paid-up members. I hope by now members would have received the new journal, which was mailed, I think, early November, like the 2nd or the 3rd of November. The museum is now open weekdays thanks to our dedicated volunteers. We welcome our newest volunteer, Rosie Peacock. Stand with. She's been very useful, and she's helping relabel all the yellow and tarnished labels around the museum. More school visits since September, and the cruise passengers have been a little on the slow side, the visits, not them, the visits. But it seems to be increasing, especially on Friday when that big ship of 3,800 came in on Friday. And then we're expecting an increase next week when the big ship, I think, will go 5,400 passengers as well. So hopefully we'll get more people in the museum. I hope you'll notice several improvements to our building. The porch is in the process of being painted. It just needs the final coat on Wednesday. Our air conditioning is fully operational and now on a time-controlled thermostat. Oops. The man showed me how to program it from the usual 3:30 finishing time today to 7:30, but I messed up. Sorry about that. So we're on fans for the moment. I'll try to get it fixed by next week's meeting. The electrics are also being upgraded, and of course we have our wonderful new logo up. So we start to look nice. Our guest speaker today is a Grand Bahamian. He describes himself as an entrepreneur with an artistic and engineering background. He was born in Roxsound, Eleuthera, the son of a family island administrator and a school teacher who turned housewife. He's the author of the Rail and Locomotive History of the Bahamas. He is currently working on his second book, The Heritage of Grand Bahama and Its People. He can be seen on YouTube on the National Art Gallery of the Bahamas website. Been featured in all major local newspapers, ZNST and Charles Carter's Bahamians. He's given many presentations to social clubs, heritage festivals, and 2 years ago to the Bahamas Historical Society. He has lectured at the College of the Bahamas on the Northern Campus. Our speaker is a married father of 2, and his passions are industrial and social history, visual and performing arts, baking, and anything technical in nature. I have pleasure introducing Darius D. Williams. Darius will talk to us on the liberated African settlements in the northern Bahamas. Thank you. You can operate that yourself? You can, yeah.
Okay. I know, good thing I get up at 6 o'clock. I might be a little bit early because I thought it was 7. We'll go with what we have.
It's funny how they seem to think that.
Now, my talk tonight is on the liberated Africans and emancipated slaves, the settlements of the Northern Bahamas, and their settlements in the Northern Bahamas. I emancipate myself from speakers, especially when the press isn't around, because I kind of like to move around. Right?
That's right.
You know, I might be Anglican in religion, but I'm kind of a Baptist in presentation. Now, this really came out of a talk given in Great Haiti, Abaco, at their Heritage Festival they have been so nice as to invite me twice to their Heritage Festival. The first time when they found out that I had written on an Abaco subject in my initial book, The Rail and Locomotive History of the Bahamas. And they asked me for a second time. I said, no, I don't want to talk about the same thing a second time. And in my preparation for the heritage of Grand Bahama and its people, what happened was, it was really the capital of all the northern Bahamas. And so I've expanded it, instead of being Great Key as a settlement for emancipated slaves and liberated Africans, into all of the northern Bahamas. So I've kind of even expanded it beyond the limits of my book. And you know, it's funny how these things kind of have a spin-off effect. Basically, the African heritage of the northern Bahamas can be, if you're researching, viewed through loyalist veterans. A lot of people don't realize that we had African loyalist veterans. There were African Americans who fought on the British side, and when the British lost, they, just like the other loyalists who brought their slaves, were brought into the Bahamas as free men. In fact, if you go into the New York Public Library, as I did on my last trip there, there's a book talking about the list of Negroes. And it has 2 voyages to Abaco and 1 to Cat Island, believe it or not, of loyalist veterans. So we have some loyalist veterans that ended up in the northern Bahamas also. You can go to the slave registers, which are in the Department of Archives. You can look at the special justice reports. Special justices were the justices brought into the Bahamas because the colonial government in Britain didn't trust the former masters taking care of the slaves or administering law to the slaves after emancipation, nor did they trust the slaves to treat their former masters right. So these were brought in as third-party neutral people, in that they were expected to administer all facets of the emancipation process. We have the Liberated African status reports. There are 2 main ones that I am aware of now, and I'm sure there's probably more. But the main ones that I know, they actually had a commission inquiry in 1928 as to the status of all of the liberated Africans up to that time. Now, what are liberated Africans? Some people don't know that they were liberated Africans along with slaves. Liberated Africans were those slaves after the transatlantic slavery was abolished by the British and others, but the British stuck to it more than the others. So, after 1807, even though you can still have a slave in any of the British colonies or slaves, you could not bring new ones from Africa after 1807. And the British enforced it more than their brethren like Portugal, Spain, United States, who signed on to the treaty but didn't enforce it. So if they found anybody bringing slaves from Africa, they boarded the boat and let them off on their nearest possession. Or in some cases, if the consulate in Cuba found out that some were coming into Cuba, he made a big protest. They got them out of Cuba and to their nearest possession. About 6,000 people between 1811 and 1860 came to the Bahamas in that way. So that's how we know about the liberated Africans. And there was also a report, because they believed they were taking some of them to Texas to be re-enslaved in America, because slavery in America lasted much longer than here, as in Cuba, as in Brazil, who was the last to get rid of slavery in this area of the world in 1888, or approximately there.